Anyway, hey, welcome to the program. We've got a District 16 resident. His name is Lane Scott. He is a friend of mine and a political activist and a very, very sharp mind. Lane, welcome back to the program, sir.
Well, thank you, Paul. It's good to be here, even at this time of the morning.
Yeah, that's right. I know it's early, right? But hey, we're setting you. Welcome. You're setting the narrative with me for the day. I mean, this is the establishment now. They're listening to this show. Because they got to figure out what they have to fight. They have to figure out what they have to combat. So they listen to this program now in order to figure out what to refute the rest of the day in the afternoon. Welcome. You're part of that now, Lane.
It's an honor.
Hey, I wanted to have you on. I want to talk about the implications here. You have the Senate District 16 special election coming up. It's the vacant seat of the late Senator Greg Stanridge. And, of course, it's a three-way race. You have Mr. Heffley. You have Breann Davis. They're, both Republicans running. And then you have Bob Bailey. Bob Bailey's been on the program. He's coming up here at the top of this next hour. So, Lane, what are the stakes up in Senate District 16? How do you see this race?
Well, I agree with the media and the newspapers that are saying it's all about the Medicaid expansion or Obamacare in Arkansas, whether it sinks or swims.
So you think, we covered this yesterday, it was a Steve Bronner article that highlighted their positions, the three Republicans' positions. You had Mr. Heffley, who supported the status quo. Breann Davis supporting the status quo. But then you had Bob Bailey, who was saying, no, I don't support the status quo. It was a very anti-establishment view. He's the only one that says, I don't think this is good for our state. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that's right. And I almost said I don't want to overstate the case because there are other issues, but it's pretty difficult to overstate the case regarding since the governor has made Medicaid expansion, and so has the leadership in the legislature, the centerpiece of their public policy, and made everything depend upon it. And I think that's what's behind the desire to raise all the taxes and the whole bit.
Yeah, they did. They tried to raise taxes an incredible amount last year. I'm really glad that you said that our entire this is the centerpiece. You said this is the centerpiece of their public policy. You see, a lot of times, one of the techniques that the establishment or any big government people that they use to grow government is projection and deflection. They try to project on their opponents what they themselves are guilty on, and you kind of hit on that just now, because a lot of times, because of what the Republicans did in 2013, a minority of Republicans with all the Democrats, because the majorities or the breakdown was still very close, as opposed to now where the Republicans have the massive majorities. They set us on a course to depend on this program as the centerpiece. And so a lot of times they'll project at me or Conduit or any organization that has consistently always held the same position that Obamacare is not a good policy and we should run from it. They say, you guys only talk about one issue. Well, you just hit on it, Lane. It's actually, they may not talk about it because they don't want to be exposed as being big government progressives who are solidifying Obama's, signature domestic achievement in Arkansas. But essentially, they have tied everything we do budget-wise to this huge blunder and mistake. And instead of just admitting it was a mistake, ending the program, and moving on, they just keep, honestly, they keep lying about it. They keep lying about how bad things are. They keep trying to sugarcoat everything. And right now, Asa has a primary, and so they only care about the next 4 or 5 months. But, they project, well, you only care about one issue. No, you only care about one issue, because the only thing that you can do is carefully craft your language to try to cloak what's really going on here. And the fact is, we don't have money for roads. We don't have money for prisons because you guys have committed so much to welfare programs for able-to-work adults. Go ahead, Lane. Respond to that if you feel like.
Oh, yeah, I agree with everything that you said. And I think there's so much deception going on regarding the Medicaid expansion. If the objective was really to provide medical care to poor people who didn't work but were able to work, who didn't have children, and who are not disabled, you could do it a whole lot cheaper if you just pay for their doctor visits. Instead, though, we have this giant money laundering scheme that's a payoff to insurance companies. I think primarily Blue Cross Blue Shield. They get their part, and then the state has their 2.5% premium tax, and so the state gets to grow from that. And then these insurance companies, as far as we know, and it doesn't take much imagination to see that they could easily be paying off senators and representatives, and because there's no Medicaid disclosure law that passed the last session, we will never know about it.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, you're getting into what a lot of people don't want to talk about. How many of these politicians, that get elected are now consultants for Medicaid entities? That's a really good question. All of a sudden, Medicaid entities need the services of a politician, not in their official capacity. Oh, no, not in their official capacity as a representative or senator, but now all of a sudden we just need to hire you as a consultant, or you need to have a private consulting company, and we'll contract with you. That we have no way of knowing if that is going on. We have no way of knowing if that kind of behavior is taking place. Because they don't have to disclose it like you would have to disclose, for example, and this has been used many times, if you are a politician and you have a lawn care business, and let's say you get a contract with a publicly funded university to cut their grass, you have to disclose that. There's no penalty. There's nothing wrong with it, per se. You just have to let people know, hey, I'm a politician and my company is now getting taxpayer money for this service or whatever. We should have to do that. These politicians should have to do that when it comes to this Medicaid entity. I mean, folks, let me just lay this out for you. We're in this situation, pure and simple, because Republicans campaigned in 2012 against Obamacare Medicaid expansion. And then Republicans, were successful. They had a slim majority. And the Democrats, they believed in this policy, this march towards socialism. So everything's fine with them. You know how the Democrats are going to vote. But to get Republicans, and this is going to be inflammatory, but I think history's going to judge this to be true. To get Republicans to go back on their word, you had to pay them to do it. Now, indirectly, whether it's illegal or not, that remains to be seen. But you can clearly see, if you go look at campaign finance reports, what it cost to run a Senate campaign before Obamacare was implemented in Arkansas versus after. It's very clear. I mean, you're talking about, $300,000. In some cases, you can see these campaign contributions go up for some of these Republicans from health care PACs, Arkansas health care PACs, non-Arkansas health care PACs. I mean, the amount of money that was infused in this state, after 2012, in 2013, that's how they got these Republicans to go along with this monstrosity. You're talking about a $2 billion a year program, and that's a lot of money to make sure all your ducks are in a row, and we'll see what happens. But I'm like you, Lane. If Senator King has tried repeatedly to get a law passed that would require people to disclose if they make any money on the side with Medicaid entities, and it goes down in flames every single time.
Yeah, those are some amazing facts, Paul. At some point, are you going to ask me who I'm going to support?
Oh, yeah. So, who do you like? Who do you like in this special election race?
Well, if you don't mind, older guys sometimes like to tell a story. Could I give a little lead in?
Go for it. I'm sorry I keep talking so much.
No. I would rather listen to Paul Harrell even than hear Johnny Cash sing.
Oh
so.
no, okay, all right. Well, come on, your flattery is that's very flattering statement. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay, well, there was a song back in the 70s. I won't say the artist's name, but folks from that era will remember it. He spoke of the dead skunk in the middle of the road. The singer said, "You don't have to look and you don't have to see, because you can feel it in your olfactory. It's dead, it's in the middle, and it's stinking to high heaven." The dead skunk is the policies of the Arkansas political establishment. They're not on the right, although they use conservative terminology, and they run as conservatives, and they consider those of us who really are platform Republicans and conservative, they consider us extreme right, so they're not on the right, and they're not exactly on the left, but they depend upon the left to get their laws passed in the state. They're in the middle of the road, and they're the dead skunk. And the candidate that I like, Bob Bailey, is not the slickest of the candidates in the race. In fact, he's probably the least polished one, and that may be part of the reason why he's so well-liked and respected. That's probably one reason why I respect him. He doesn't put forth the most pleasing statements. And in fact, I sometimes wince because he doesn't hesitate to be straightforward in answering questions that somebody with less principle would evade or spin. But I can tell you that Bob Bailey won't be driven, and he won't be led contrary to his conservative small government, honest government instincts. He can smell that skunk in the middle of the road. He can smell it in a bill that has a misleading title, and he can smell it in the information so-called that he's being fed by folks who want him to vote a certain way. He can smell it in bad policies. If he's elected, I think I can depend upon him and his conservative instincts to guide him.
Wow. That's really well said. And what you just hit on, Lane, you know, the misleading bill titles, the deception, all of that stuff is documented. It's going on all the time. Every legislative session, that kind of stuff goes on. So I appreciate, I certainly appreciate what you said. And you know, from what I've heard of Bob, and of course I've reached out to Breanne Davis, I've reached out to these other folks, Mr. Heffley, trying to, you know, get them on the program. Haven't been successful at that yet, but you know, Bob's coming up here at 7:00. And so I'm going to talk to him, I mean, more about, you know, what's important to him, what are the policies he sees that need to be talked about that concern his home district in 16 there, but as well as this big issue. You know, he came on the program and said he's not an establishment candidate, and of course we now have an article confirming he's not for the establishment status quo policy. I'll give you the last word. Lane Scott, political activist.
No, Bob has my vote of confidence, and the other candidates, I know Luke, and I think he's a great guy, and I just have met Breanne for the first time, and I don't doubt that she's a nice young lady, but I think there's some things that they're both missing in terms of really understanding what's going on in Little Rock, and Bob understands that. He can smell that dead stuff.
Yeah. Lane Scott, I appreciate it, sir. You have a great weekend, okay?
You too, Paul. Thanks a lot.
All righty, folks. It's Johnny Cash Friday. Back in a minute.